Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is the nature of angels. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to join Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in the description section. When you join, you get advanced episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app, Patreon email where we can talk back and forth. There's also a new chat for patrons as well, and you can send me a personal message or question separately that I can answer. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a private lesson to astral project, be glad to work with you. All you have to do is go to the description section. You'll find an email there where you can just go ahead and request further information. Okay, let's get started. Angels are a big topic in today's world. And you would think that wouldn't be the case with all the modernization that we have nowadays. And you would think that angels might be some relic of the past, only believed in by the most superstitious people. However, that's just not the case. There's a widespread belief in angels, I like to say angel guides, everywhere in the West and certainly in other parts of the world, other than, your typical communist type countries. But I'd like to address my experience with the angels that I've come into contact with. And I also want to reference, the popular opinion, but also the history of them as related to us in the major source of information about angels, which are the various holy texts, like the Bible, the Quran, and various Hebrew texts. First, the popular opinion is well known to most people. If you look in the icon of this particular episode, you'll see a little picture of a very popular artwork, which shows a very feminine, very gentle looking female angel watching over two small children as they walk over a very rickety bridge. I'd like to suggest that those children probably need less protection and more brain power, but whatever. That is probably the most popular image that appears in people's heads when we think about angels. And of course, in other popular media, they're depicted as very sympathetic individuals, like Clarence in the popular movie It's a Wonderful Life. It's a movie, of course, that most people have seen, and it pops up every Christmas. Of course, Clarence there is depicted as a slightly doddering but wise and gentle old man who is actually a kind of apprentice angel who needs to help out George Bailey so that he can earn his wings. And indeed, there's a very endearing little saying by one of the urchins in George Bailey's family where they talk about every time, I think the kid says the teacher said this. Can you imagine a teacher saying this nowadays in a public school? That every time, a bell rings or whatever, an angel gets their wings, they probably would be fired the next day. But that's, I think it's pretty typical. There's plenty of other movies, but it's pretty typical of the popular imagination of angels. I'd like to discuss how the text that we actually have, in my experience, varies somewhat from this excellent PR. I don't know who's in charge of their PR, but they're doing one heck of a job. But let's take a look at what's actually written, and then I'll talk about my experiences. I imagine your mileage might vary, but I can only speak from my own experience. Okay. In the Bible, Quran, Hebrew text, angels are probably most often mentioned as messengers, bringing messages from God down to humans on earth. One particular example is an angel appearing before Mary to tell her that she'd be the mother of Jesus. Another somewhat different type of messengers were the two angels that appeared in what was the ancient world's party central, Sodom and Gomorrah, letting Lot and his family know that God was about to pull the plug on the whole operation and nuke the place, and that if they valued their hide, they better get out of Dodge ASAP. Next up, talking about messengers and I guess bringers of knowledge. In Islam, Jibril, or in the more anglicized version, Gabriel, visited Muhammad, revealing to him the beginning of the Quran. Another type of angel, which we find out about, we hear that God created the first 12 angels who he labeled as Avenging Angels. Their job was to, well, pursue wrongdoers, and to avenge the evils that they had accomplished. So far, nothing very fluffy or bunny about something like that. But to take it even further, I'm actually going to quote a Bible verse here. I'm not going to do that more than once. First Chronicles 21:15 had angels killing 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. Now, those are the kind of angels you want in your army in the clutch, right? But certainly, I think that belays the peaceful, gentle angels that are in our popular imagination. I mean, when it comes to wiping out an army, they did one heck of a job, evidently. Lastly, they can get randy, apparently. Maybe a little horny. The Watcher Angels mated with humans, giving birth to the monstrous giant Nephilim, which roamed the earth, eating everything in sight and killing people and all kinds of other fairly nasty things. So this is just a snippet. I mean, whole books have been written on this stuff, and I certainly could have written, numerous episodes just going after one case after another. But I think you'll find that they all very much, as far as the written holy literature is concerned, they all pretty much fall into one of these categories, one of these examples that I just mentioned. So all of this tends to, once again, as I said, give us a very different impression of angels than the one that we've been used to. Let me talk about just some of the experience that I've had and how I see these angels that I've encountered. Now, my biggest experience is with my own personal guardian angel who has, I don't know if he's softened, but let's just say he's gotten a little bit more used to me and my sense of humor. And I don't know if he's actually generated a sense of humor, but he's at least shown his ability to put up with my sense of humor, which I suppose is some small amount of progress. But how would I, in general, describe some of my experiences with these angel guides, as I like to call them? Well, the first word is probably not the most complimentary, but it's the one that comes to my mind, and it's the one I'm going to tell you. That is imperious. Now, I know that's not a word that people generally use on a daily basis, but when I'm looking to convey a very specific piece of information, I like to search for the perfect word. A real quick definition for those of us who don't use imperious on a daily basis. A good definition would be they give orders in a way that demonstrates that they feel superior to you. And that's been my impression. As I said, I think my angel guide has softened just a smidge. Maybe because he feels I earned it. I don't know. But there is that very imperious type attitude, that superior type attitude. No, maybe it's well deserved. Who am I to say it's not deserved? But it's the first word that comes to my mind when talking about your typical angel guide. Another word, unyielding. They're not very flexible. You really don't, you really can't negotiate with them. Compromise is just a word that I haven't found in their vocabulary. They have a particular mission. They require something in particular. They need you to change in some way or to act in some way. And there's really no talking them out of it. Another word, fierce. Now, I think some of those Avenging Angels and some of the other examples I just talked about from the holy texts would definitely demonstrate their quality of fierceness. And the fierceness seems to be born of a belief in the extreme rightness of their actions. So, once again, it's also very uncompromising. Yet another word is demanding. As I said, they don't seem to be very open to compromise. They demand the actions that you're required to perform. And there's just, I was in the military. I know the difference between a request and a command. And they don't request, they demand and they command. It's just like when the colonel tells you to do something, he gives you an order. It's not an invitation to discuss whether something should be done or not. No, it's a command. You say, yes, sir, and you make it happen. That's how I feel with my interactions with many of these angel guides. Unchanging is another word. In the holy texts and in my belief, based on what I've been able to glean, is they've always been around. They were never mortal, so they've never been in human bodies or anything. They are a creation apart. Now, I'm not going to get into, I've been quoting various religion texts and what have you, because that's where you find information about this subject. I'm not saying that any of this is proof of any particular religion or belief system. But if I'm going to talk about angels, I have to use the language in which they are discussed. So I just want to make sure I get that across. Where they originate from, I don't know for sure, but certainly the various religious texts have information on it, and they say that they were the first creation out there long before other things occurred. So that's the information out there. I can't back it up based on any experiences I have, but that's the information that's currently out there. So yeah, they're unchanging. They've been out there forever and will be around forever. Humorless. They don't really have a good human sense of humor, which I guess I can't blame them, because if you think about it, the dominant human sense of humor is sarcastic. It's gallows humor, at least mine is. So the humor comes from the understanding firsthand in nature of the human experience and everything that we go through, positive and negative. And a lot of the humor comes from our various negative experiences. It's a way humans take something that was negative and kind of spin it around and make it into something that we can laugh at. But if you don't have that human experience, humor is just something that I think is very difficult to come by. And certainly, I don't think you're going to be seeing any stand-up comedian angels anytime soon. Lastly, teacher comes to mind. Now, when I say teacher, I want you to think back to the toughest, most demanding teacher that you ever had in school. One that made you work, work, work until you couldn't write another essay, until you couldn't complete yet another homework assignment, until you couldn't possibly read another Shakespearean play. Uh, when I think about my top teachers, that's what comes to my mind. Not the easy ones. You generally forget about those, but the ones that really made you work and really made you think and actually bestowed upon you real knowledge and real wisdom. And real knowledge and real wisdom does not come easy. It only comes through the sweat of our brow. That's just the way it works. And that's the kind of teacher that I have found angels to be. So that's my little presentation on the nature of angels. What's your experience? What are your beliefs with angels? I'd love to hear what you've experienced because I don't claim to be the last word on this. It's just something that I thought I had a little bit of information to give, and people seem to be interested in the topic. It's one of the biggest sellers in New Age bookstores. So there you go. If you found this interesting, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds, subscribe if you haven't already. And as I said, please leave your questions and comments and your experiences, your beliefs surrounding angels. As always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.